Everyone has bad days. Everyone struggles at times. It doesn't matter where we are on that leadership chain, but sometimes you have to do that stop check, that commander's pause, that take that breath, just take a small step that day. Don't take a big step. Stop trying to take leaps all the time. That's not what resilience is.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Frustrated to Fluent. I'm Devon Bruce. I'm the founder and CEO of the English Communication Academy. And here we talk about what happens when communication breaks down in healthcare. And today I am speaking with David Jarvis, once known as the unluckiest man in NATO, being medically discharged from the British Army after 2 decades of service, and then hit with a life-threatening, life-changing medical condition while preparing for international sports competition. He's now better known as the walking definition of resilience, a multi award winner, keynote and motivational speaker, Invictus Games gold medalist, para athlete, and community champion. So, David, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm really excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah. Looking forward to it. Been looking forward to it, I should say. Yeah.
Thank you. And the reason why that I'm really excited to talk to you today is because we're talking about resilience. And this is one of the things that a lot of people think that may not be prevalent in healthcare because they're the ones that are of service to others. But it doesn't matter if someone is an immigrant and they're in a new country, or if they are leading a global team and they're under pressure and they feel this burnout coming on because they need to produce. At the end of the day, resilience is resilience no matter where it shows up and how it shows up. And one of the things that I've seen as someone who helps teams with their communication breakdowns is that resilience definitely needs to be a part of the conversation. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this today. Many people believe resilience means like pushing through without slowing down. But in your experience, what does real resilience actually look like?
So my first thought to that question is it really does depend on the challenge. Resilience is all about the ability to keep going, absorb challenges into your normal routine and keep doing what you're doing. A good example, right? A funny example. So something I've actually seen happen. I've done it while I was in the military as well. You're walking along, you're trying to get somewhere, and all of a sudden your shoelace snaps. Now, who carries a spare shoelace with them? Especially if you're going somewhere important. Now, in the military, if your shoelace snaps, you're supposed to be highly brush polished boots. You've got to have your straight lines down your uniforms. You've got to be looking the business because if you start major catches, you're looking like you've just walked out of I don't know, a big tramp store or something like that. Then the world's gonna come down on you real
Right.
quick. You know what I mean? So it's a
Right.
simple thing that can cause a world of hurt, and who carries a spare shoelace? Do you know what I mean? But the same principle applies to any challenge
Hmm.
that comes along. I mean, that's just a simple thing. The reason I bring that up is I'm sat looking at my shoe. Well, I've got my feet crossed and I've got my trainers in front of me, and it just suddenly occurred to me, what if my shoelace snapped? But you take any challenge.
Hmm.
You get into the week before payday, and so all of a sudden you run out of money and you need to put more money in the electric meter. What do? This is where those little habits come into play that allow you to absorb that challenge into your normal routine. I mean, you've still got to do that little regain. If you have to take £100 out of your emergency fund, pay your electric, or $100, sorry, out of your emergency fund, pay your electric, you've then got to put that back. You know what I mean? Of course, when you get paid. But the
Hmm.
idea that
Hmm.
you can just keep going just like that, as if nothing happened, that's not resilience. That's not right at all. There is going to be that little delay while you do that sort of what we used to call in the military, that commander's pause, where you step back and look at the situation and go, right, what do I need to do to be able to absorb this into my routine? Because it could be something little, or it could be quite a significant challenge, like, a medical emergency, you know what I mean? And that's not something you're just going to be able to
Yeah.
crack on and keep moving forward with. So there's definitely got to be that step back to look at the bigger picture and go, where does this fit into what's going on? If that makes sense, because that's what resilience is. It's your ability to absorb a challenge into your normal routine. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's a case of just pushing forward, if it makes sense.
Yeah. That makes so much sense because when I think about resilience in my own life, both personally and professionally, once upon a time, I did think it was just pushing through and just pulling myself by my bootstraps and sucking up and dealing with it. But at the end of the day, all that did was cause me to burn out.
Mhm,
But when I had to slow down and take a step back, that allowed me to really think outside of the box. And
mhm,
I can't speak for anybody else when it comes to resilience, but I know for me personally, I'm able to be a lot more creative when I have to really solve a big problem that could be an emergency. So
mhm,
yeah, I hear what you mean when regards to just slowing down and taking it in before you act.
mhm,
Now, having said that, resilience, it's often praised as a strength, right?
mhm. Yep.
Just push through and, be strong. But what are some of the common myths about resilience that actually harm people in the long run?
Well, I think you've touched on one quite nicely, just like that, just with what you're saying there. The idea of just being strong, just pushing through. In the military, we used to say to grizz it out, keep calm and carry on. I mean,
Hmm.
most people have seen that on a mug somewhere or a notebook or something. It's quite popular in the UK. That phrase, you see it on a lot of
Hmm.
things, keep calm, carry on. But I mean, the one that really grinds my gears is that when we think of resilience, we think of the phrase to bounce back, and I can't think of anything worse to describe it. That's not resilience at all. I go back to the point I made in the previous question. It's the ability to absorb a challenge into your normal routine, not to hit it and bounce on again. I mean, you take a good analogy I like to use is you take a car. I mean, if you're bouncing every time you hit a bump, you're not going to have a particularly pleasant ride, are you? Resilience is
Right.
better attributed to your shock absorber. So the ability to hit the bump as you're riding along, as you're driving along, sorry, and it takes the impact and allows you to keep driving smoothly. Does that make sense? That's the shock. So that's the shock absorber
Hmm.
does that, not
Hmm.
the springs. So if you're bouncing, there's something going very wrong. Um, but I mean, so that's a massive myth. I mean, just to stay strong and keep going. Well, where does that stop check come in? That commander's pause I mentioned before. If you don't stop and consider what is going on, I mean, take my personal challenge when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. I mean, I was really ill, and I was trying to grizz it out for 2 weeks. I lost a little over 26% of my body weight in that time period, and what ultimately led me to go to
Oh,
the doctors
wow.
was that I didn't know what was going on. I couldn't figure it out anymore, so I had to reach out and ask for help. And I'd been trying everything I could think of, with my experience. I mean, I've got a lot of experience with fitness and nutrition, so I was training for the Invictus Games, and I was doing 2 a days. I was working as well, still, providing for my family. I was trying to spend time with my kids as well. I've got two young kids and a wife as well. Um, but I was
Hmm.
I was tired all the time, and I just couldn't. After 2 weeks, I just couldn't figure it out anymore. So I had to take that step back and go, right, what am I going to do about this? And dare I say it, that's where I had to take a little bit of humility in the fact that I didn't know the answer. So I had to reach out for support. So the common myth is that to grizz it out is only going to do harm in the end of the day, because you need to take that step back to look at the situation. It might be that it's a subject you don't know about. It could be there's a mistake happening that's continually happening that you need to kind of address. It could be that there's a weak point somewhere that you need to identify, and without taking that step back to evaluate the whole situation, you might miss it. And that's what I had to do. I had to take that step back and go, right, what I'm doing is not working. What can I do differently to allow me to keep moving forward? So if I just kept grizzing it out, the doctors made no bones about the fact that if I'd have kept doing that, I'd have been in a box within another couple of days. They were very clear about that. So
Wow.
it's so I take mine as an extreme example. It wasn't it was really quite
Right.
close. So yeah, and
Wow.
I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but you need that step back, and a little bit of humility to acknowledge the fact that this is a situation that's happening. What can I do about it? If I can't do something about it, then I need to look at where can I go to get something done about it. If that makes sense, how can I delegate this somewhere else around my team, or do I need to get Google involved and start researching something, or But you need to take that step back. So to grizz out, tough it out, keep going. That, if in my case, it would have killed me. So literally, yeah,
Wow. Wow.
extreme example, but.
I'm really glad that you decided to go to the doctor and get
Hmm.
checked out because, I will say guilty as charged. I'm one of those people that
Hmm.
still sometimes be like, "Oh, I'll just kinda tough it out and see," until it gets to a point where I'm like, "Okay, I really need to start asking for help." So I'm really
Hmm.
glad that you decided to go and do that because, you didn't realize that how serious that was, and I think a lot of people fall into that, especially people in leadership that you
Hmm.
touched on, and that's
Yeah.
actually a good segue into my next question because you have a lot of experience with this scenario, and like I said, the people that we work with in healthcare, we see this all the time. It doesn't
Hmm.
matter if it's a doctor leading their staff or if it's an executive leading a global team. We see this
Hmm.
all the time. So, with you and your experience with this, why do you think so many high performing professionals feel the pressure to stay strong and grit it out and tough it out instead of asking for help? And then also, how does that affect leadership over time?
So for me, my experience of resilience, it's has come from experience, and a lot of that experience was mistakes. I would say mistakes was my greatest source of education. Especially when it came to the diabetes as
Mhm,
well, because I made a lot of mistakes trying to learn how to manage that and move forward with it, and then compete with it. And
mhm,
then obviously
mhm,
move it into normal life after competition as well. And then educate my kids around it and educate my friends around it. So they kind of all kind of know, where I can go and what I can do and all that kind of jazz. There's a lot to take in with that. So, but the key point of it was though, it was recognizing that I didn't have all the answers. I can't do it all on my own. There's certain things that I need to get help with. So that would be the first thing that I would say is that I've seen with a lot of leaders is the pride takes too big a toll. They lose that
yeah,
humility to step back and go, hey, I mean, take the scenario I just talked about a minute ago. Um, the ability to step back and go, hey, I don't know the answer to this. I can't just make this work anymore. I need to get help with something. I mean, as a leader, the higher up you go, the more responsibility you're going to have. The more accountable you're going to be. And the significance there is that you can't then delve into the detail as much. You've got to rely on the people around you. You've got to delegate more. You can't. If you try and do everything, you're going to spread yourself far too thinly, and ultimately things will end up failing. So you've got to have that level of trust in your team. So for me, resilience, there's three key aspects to resilience. The first is humility, recognizing where your limits are and knowing and taking action to do
mhm,
something about it, whether it's learning something new, whether it's being able to delegate, whether it's asking for help. You know, the next bit is consistency. Sorry, because it's resilience is
mhm,
about maintaining a safety net, so to speak, a net that can catch the challenges and allow you to absorb them effectively into your routine. If you don't have many strands in this net, and each strand could link to various different things. It depends on the subject, will depend on the net. So, like
mhm,
for cybersecurity, for example, you might have various different applications and governance and policies and all the names of other things. With medicine, it could be your triage system, your medical supplies, keeping a generator in the basement in case the power comes off, things of that nature. So it depends on the subject, would depend on what's involved in the net, if that makes sense. But you need that. And it's that
yeah,
net, sorry, in order to maintain that resilience. But there's no one big strand, because if there was, that's not resilience. That's just a tether, a rope, just to hold it in place, if that makes sense. Just keeping with that net analogy. You need as many strands as possible coming away from this net in all different directions in order to keep that safety net, if that makes sense. And it's
absolutely.
recognizing where your limits are and being prepared to go out and get it, go out and do something about it. So so the three things: recognizing where they need to go elsewhere to get the help, and so on and so forth. Consistent maintaining it, keeping on top of it. And then the last one was ability as well, recognizing where something needs to change. If you're not getting it right, change up what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? So I go back to my example I used a moment ago.
Yeah,
I was trying and trying and trying to get a handle of my condition. And at a point where I couldn't do it anymore, I had to go and get some help. But it was, if I didn't want to recognize that, if my pride, if I wasn't prepared to do it, and I was like, and fully believed that I was doing everything right and I should just keep going, I wouldn't be here having a conversation with you right now. So for me, they're
mhm,
the three
mhm,
things that are absolutely critical to resilience. And I think a lot of leaders, the position they're in, they've got to set an example, and they think that that means that they can never be wrong. They can never be the person asking for help. They can never be the person asking for support. And I think that's something that, it's a good thing in leadership, is to have that level of humility. So long story there, apologies, but we got
Yeah.
there.
Oh, no, no, that makes so much sense just because I really resonated with what you said on two fronts. The first one is back when I was an English coach. When I really first started my business in 2020, I was an English coach and I had a 10-week program that I sold to individual doctors. That's how I started my business. And one of the things that a lot of doctors really struggled with is the idea of needing help with
Hmm.
something as basic as English.
Hmm.
And the guilt and the shame and the stigma really kept people stuck for
Hmm.
a very, very long time. And I would constantly joke with some of them and also to some of my colleagues that I was like the kept secret. I
Hmm.
felt like the other man or the other woman in the relationship because they were so private. They did not want anybody to know that they were getting help.
Hmm.
And then also, it resonated with me because when I was a consultant, I used to do consulting for international CEOs. They wanted to do business with the United States and they wanted to make sure that their English was up to par and they felt
Hmm.
confident in these big meetings. And so I consulted them when it came to making sure that their English and their confidence was good. Being in those spaces with those CEOs, it really opened my eyes to understanding
Hmm.
how impactful it can be when a leader asks for help,
Hmm.
when there's no shame or stigma involved with someone who's in a position of power to fully admit that they don't know all the answers. And that's
Hmm.
something that I took with me when I left that position. And that's actually a good segue into my next question because again, you have a lot of experience with this. Um, Now, I just touched on it when I said that there's usually guilt or
Hmm.
shame when it comes to people needing support, especially around communication and language and healthcare. But in your experience, why do capable professionals sometimes feel shame for needing help with something that they believe to be basic, or a leader feels like they should already know this information? Why do you think this is a part of the experience for them?
So the reality is when you're that person, that figurehead, the head of the team or the department CEO, whichever level, if you've got like a handful of people working for you, or you've got a whole company or organization, whichever stage, I'd say if you find yourself in a position where you don't know an answer to something, or you don't know what to do in a certain situation and such like, you've got all these people looking at you, regardless of the size of the team or the organization and so on. And it's difficult to stand there and say, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? And I'd say that can bring about that idea of shame, if that makes sense. But in but
Hmm.
I'm going to go
Hmm.
back to my point about humility, in that you can't know everything. I mean, you take the world, for example, and technology, it's changing so fast. It's going forward so fast. I mean, take artificial intelligence, for example, and you tend to find the youth, the younger generations, because it's being more and more included into education and things of that nature, which wasn't 10 years ago, or further back. You take some of these experienced doctors, for example, who, they're 40, 50, 60 years old, it won't have been in their schooling.
Hmm.
They won't
Hmm.
have seen that in their universities when they did it. So they're going to have to rely more on this new generation coming through. But it's still quite difficult to go to somebody and say, "Hey, you're rattling out all these reports really quickly. How are you doing it? Is there any possibility you can help me to do that?" So I
Hmm.
definitely think that I go back to that humility bit. Is the ability to ask for help, especially where there's things that we're not going to know anything about because we weren't exposed to it when we were coming through the system. Regardless of our walk of life.
Right.
Does that make sense? I hope that makes
Right.
sense.
Oh yeah, that makes total sense.
Mhm.
And as we are wrapping up here, I really want to know what are some practical ways that leaders can build resilient teams without unintentionally rewarding overwork or even silence.
So I was infamous when I was still in the military for using phrases like a happy team's an effective team. And we've heard other phrases. I'm sure we've
Ooh, yeah.
heard other phrases about attitude reflects leadership and things of that nature. Take me as a prime example. If I'm in a team, I want to feel like I'm part of a team, and I want to feel valued. And there are two critical things for me to feel happy and better devote my time and be, dedicated to that team. So you need to be able to give them a bit of trust. You need to be able to give them make them feel valued by asking questions. Make them let them know that you care about what they're doing, why they're doing it, and that it's okay to make mistakes. You know, because like I said, mistakes have arguably been my
Yeah.
greatest source of education. And there's no such thing as a perfect team. There's no such thing as a perfect plan, in my humble opinion, either. So speak to them, ask them questions, talk to them, give them opportunity to try things, to be open, and to know that they're not going to get their ass chewed if they do make a mistake.
Mhm.
Encourage the idea that they can try new things and give things go, especially with technology in mind as well, because it is only going to keep going keep advancing, if that makes sense. I would certainly say be open to trying things, be open to giving your team that freedom to make those mistakes, and again, try things and ask them for help. Make a point of doing that.
Yeah.
Especially with the older generation, I find that the younger generation really want lots of technology and screen time. The older generation don't want any at all, but find the happy medium. There's a human being in in these teams. They treat them like human beings. Give them that bit of trust and respect, and it
Mhm.
will come back as well. And like I said, if they feel like a part of a team, feel valued, I think that's arguably one of the most important, two of the most important things, I should say, to make having a successful team. Because if they don't feel like they're part of a team and they don't feel
Right.
valued, it's a matter of time before it crumbles, I think. So happy team's an effective team. That's what I'm going to
Yeah.
finish on.
Amen. Amen. I love that. And then finally, if someone is watching and they feel tired of being the strong one all the time, they're tired of having that feeling of they can't ask for help, and they want to be more resilient and they want to show up more resilient. What's one shift in thinking that could help them redefine resilience in a healthier way?
So I would say that back to the very first question where we talked about, not the first one, sorry, the second one, the myths around resilience, staying strong, moving forward at all costs. Resilience is not about the big things; it's about the little things, and the little things that add up. Rome wasn't built in a day, but they built it, but they put a brick down by the hour. So
Mhm.
treat it as
Mhm.
one little thing at a time. Everyone has bad days. Everyone struggles at times. It doesn't matter where we are on that leadership chain, but sometimes you have to do that stop check, that commander's pause, that take that breath. Just take a small step that day. Don't take a big step. Stop trying to take leaps all the time. That's not what resilience is. It's the little things that are added together to give you that, like I said, the strands of the net. And each strand report that links to a different thing. Take the time to focus on one little strand and stop thinking about the whole thing all at once, because that's where a lot of people get overwhelmed. They look at the whole piece, the whole thing all at once, and think, right, I've got to do it all. But you don't. It's just focus on one little thing at a time. And if it is getting too much, just hone in on that particular thing just for a short while. Just take your mind off the big picture just for a moment. It's the little things that make all the difference, not the big details.
So true. So true. Oh, I'm so glad that you pointed that out because you're absolutely right. It's not the big thing, it's the small little things that add up over time. You are
Yeah.
absolutely right there. So David, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you online?
So my website's the best place to go. I've got all my social media links on there. So it's speakingsbc.com. Nice
Okay,
and easy.
thank you. And the link for that is in the description box below. And if you are in healthcare and you feel like you need help with your communication breakdowns on your team, you can reach out to us to learn more. The link for that is in the description box below as well. So, David, thank you so much for coming on. This was a really good conversation about resilience and really talking about what it really means and debunking a lot of those myths. I think that's such an important thing for people to know and understand.
Agreed. Yeah. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Yeah, I've enjoyed it as well.
Thank you so much. And thank you for either watching or tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Take care.